All right, so take a look on your page here. Back in the 60s, a man named Everett Rogers, he developed a way for understanding people based on how they respond to new things, new innovations. So here are the percentages of people that he said and their response to new things. So the first group, the 2% group, are the innovators. They're the ones who actually create the new things. They're the ones who are out there trying to do something new. They're exploring, taking risk. They're the ones who make it happen. They like to create the new. The next group, he called the early adopters. This is 14% of people, and they like to be the first one to the table. If there's something innovative, they want to go try it. They want to go see it. They want to buy in early in it. They want to see the new thing, the new trend, the new innovation, and get into it early. The next group is the early majority, he called it. This is the larger percentage, 34%, and they like to sit and watch and see what happens. Is this going to be worth it? Let's hear from some other people. Let's see how it works out for them. And then they'll listen to the stories and buy in if they heard good results. The next group is also a large percentage, the late majority. They're also 34%, and they tend to be much more skeptical. They tend to think the new stuff is not going to be effective or good or worth it. And so they start with a negative assumption. Okay, they don't have a positive view of the new, they've got a negative view of the new, and they have to be won over before they can ever begin to think about buying into it. And then the last group he called the laggards, the 16%, and they're the ones who are the last to adopt any kind of new innovation. If there's something new, they're going to be way down the road. I have family that live in Joplin, Missouri, and I remember, I don't know if this is as true today as it used to be, but of course here living in the Metroplex, we get a lot of the new stuff that's happening, and you watch the culture buy in at a level that's different than what I saw in Joplin. I go to Joplin and we'd go to the mall and I would see styles there that were 5 to 10 years behind where we were here in the Metroplex. I thought that was interesting that different parts of the country are at different places with that. So based on these categories here, where would you put yourself and why? Anybody want to jump on out there?
I'll jump on out there.
All right.
I guess I would put myself somewhere between the early majority and the adopters. I guess it depends on the tech.
Okay.
There's some like computer stuff and things like that. I'm probably on the more early side.
Okay.
Like job related and a lot of things, I'm probably more towards the early majority. I want to see more benefits, see some reviews.
Yes.
Stuff like that. I tend to guide people away in my work from some of the newer things, just because I've seen how badly they go. You talk about a lifetime product and you don't really know till 2030
exactly
down the road if it's really gonna perform.
It's gonna hold up.
There.
Okay.
So yeah, that's probably where I am. Mostly probably early majority and things in the early adopter.
Okay. Anybody else? Where'd you put yourself and why?
I put myself in the early majority.
Okay.
Like I said, I like to wait a couple of years and depending on the equipment, but when new phones come out, I don't jump to upgrade, but when it's time, I will upgrade. Or when my computer needs upgrading, I'll do that to new systems and stuff. But I would say early majority because I don't just jump into it. I like to, like it says, listen to stories and research and everything.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Where'd you put yourself?
I'm a laggard.
Way to jump on out there and just say that and own it.
Laggard.
No.
I'm sorry. It's okay.
Not a laggard, I'm a slapper.
Yeah, she will slap you. I've seen her slap her husband before, so watch out.
Ask Hunter how his shin feels.
Getting rowdy.
Women will understand this. I didn't start wearing skinny jeans until this past year, and that's only because I couldn't find non-skinny jeans.
It's true.
But
Rude.
but
Oh, wow.
mine.
Oh, I know what they are. I just don't get them.
Yeah, I don't need.
Yeah, you can't find just regular jeans.
Yeah.
Not ones that actually look good. Now they
Right.
all have like bell
You
bottoms.
start seeing
Yeah, I
high
don't want to be in the
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Bring back the 70s.
high school kids
No.
are wearing jeans tighter than Wranglers back in.
Yes, yes, yes.
the
Yeah. So if you follow guys' trends at all, you see out there that some guys are wearing dress shoes with dress pants with no socks.
Okay, that is stupid.
And very short pants.
Yes.
Very short pants that show a lot of foot and ankle.
I have to agree, that's
Typically
stupid.
has everybody's nude. There you go.
What was it?
Typically has
I'm just
everybody's
thinking,
nude.
I'm just thinking
Oh, with
of
the
like
suit thing?
how
You're making
comfortable
fun?
you
Exactly.
with, like without a sock in your shoe.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that.
No,
Or
they're
Only
wearing,
Sperry's you can
They've-
they're wearing the
Just
women's
fungus.
socks, like the little look.
yeah, they've got the extreme no shows.
Yeah, like I have one right now where they go to like right here.
Aaron would never.
You know,
go
like
so
their
far.
socks like so that you can't see
Just
them.
try it one. Just get that for Christmas for him.
That would bother me.
Wow, yeah. I'd be able to wear that shoe for 2 days.
Hey, that's pretty long. I thought you were going to say 2 hours or 2 minutes. All right. Well, we're going to talk about tonight buy-in and the importance of us as believers being leaders. We may not be the leaders of style and fashion and innovation, but there is a category that we should be leaders in. There should be an area in our life where we have early buy-in, and that is when it comes to being a learner. We have to be the ones who set the tone and the pace for growth and change in our life. If you want to see the people around you change, it has to start with you. When you begin to change, in time, they will see the change and respond to that. But if it never happens in us, if we're a late adopter or a lagger when it comes to following Christ and changing, we can never expect the people around us to change. You're not going to influence if you're not setting the pace yourself for where you want to see change occur. So let's look at some points tonight. The first one here is this, that God calls us to be change agents. Change agents. We are called as followers of Christ to be ones who set the pace, really, for the culture. We ought to be the ones who are setting the direction, the tone. We ought to be the ones who are the most creative, passionate, energetic, genius types. We ought to be the ones who are setting the direction. You look at this passage here from Matthew 5:13 through 16. Jesus talks about who we are to be. Someone read those verses for us tonight, and then let's talk about what it means to be an early adopter as a believer. Who wants to read those for us?
I'll read them.
All right?
You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven.
All right, man, there's so much in this passage here about influence and making a difference in other people's lives. What do you see in this passage about innovators, early adopters, late adopters? What do you see here?
The laggards would be walked on, trampled on by the man.
Yes, yes. This is the salt that loses its flavor. This is that has no more value to it. I was talking to Matt, our student director here, and he was over next door in Main Street Center, which this building's been here a long time, long before us, probably built in the 70s, 80s, somewhere in there. And he was going through and cleaning out some of the stuff in the kitchen that hadn't been looked at, obviously, in a long time. And there was a section up there that had some seasoning in it. He said he pulled out a bottle of oregano, and they looked on the bottom of it to see when the expiration date was. 1999 was the expiration date. So I don't know when it was put in there. If it was, 97, 96, I don't know, when it was in there. But you talk of it had lost its flavor. I wouldn't want to make some spaghetti and use that in it, It'd be nasty. Jesus says, you're the salt of the earth. You're the one who's to be preserving and being the influencer. You are the culture changer. But if you lose your ability to be different, to be on the leading edge, if you're the one who hasn't changed in some time, you become influence-less. You become aged oregano that just needs to be tossed out. Get rid of that. Don't use that. What else do you see here in this passage about innovators, early adopters, late adopters, or laggards?
Well, when they talk about lighting a lamp, you put it on a lampstand so it can be seen and provide light. Set it, shine that light. So we should be that light shining for others.
Yes. We're the ones who have to give direction in the darkness. We're the ones who have to light the way. I know we all have people in our lives that we want to influence. And there's probably some people in your life that you think, what is wrong with them? How come they can't see? Well, it could be because there's an area in their life where they're walking in darkness. They need someone to not just shine light for them, but to be light for them. And that's our calling. That's each of our responsibilities. What else do you see in these verses about these innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority?
Well, it says that a city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, so you have to be exposed where others can see you and not just sitting in your house doing the good stuff.
Yeah.
But no one else can see you, so how can you be an influencer?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it almost has kind of this feel there that the city that's on a hill, it can't be hidden. In other words, people are watching you whether you realize it or not. You're the city on a hill. You're the one who God dwells in. People are watching you. You can't be hidden, but what kind of message is coming from you? Light or darkness? How about there in verse 16 where it says, let your light so shine before men? That's an interesting phrase there. It doesn't just say, let your light shine. It says, so shine. What's his point with using the word so there?
So much.
Yes.
Brighter.
Yes. It looks like it's pointing to the next part of the verse.
Direction.
Yeah, let your light so shine that this may be the result, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Let it shine in such a way that it causes other people to say, that could only be God. It doesn't cause them to look at the person and say, oh, I want to glorify them, or man, they're cool. No, it makes them say, wow, only God could be doing that in their life. Let your light so shine in such a way. So, what does this mean then about how influence and change happens through us? Okay, we're the light, we're the city, we're the salt. What does this say about how it happens in us and the impact it has on others? Influence.
I think the overall is that with the salt being a preservative, that and I kind of use when you're going to cross a river and it's too wide, and somebody has to start it, and they say, okay, let's all be connected. Somebody gives a direction, somebody encourages. We're going to make this. We're going to do this. Let's have an idea. Let's have a plan. I'm not the person that wants to go out there and try, but I want to encourage somebody. And after you've taken a chance, I'll support you.
Yeah.
If you fall, I'll help pick you up.
Yeah.
But I want to make it to the other side. I want God to be glorified
Yes.
in us bringing those people to the other side.
Exactly. Yeah. What does this say about, I mean, let's just make it pretty real for each of us. There's people in your life, obviously, that you want to influence, or you wouldn't have chosen this class to sit in. How does this happen? What does this verse have to say about your situation?
Well, I'll go back to what I said this morning at the men's breakfast. I have been trying to influence my wife in all the wrong ways. Because I've been trying to tell her how to do things and what she should do and all of those things that she says, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do, So it hasn't been working very well. So
All the ladies are trying to not say
yeah,
amen.
I know. Believe me, I know. And, so, that's when I just started praying and said, God, show me the way you want me to do this. Your will be done, not my will be done.
Boom. Nice.
And so he's shown me that I need to change me and the way I present myself to her and the way I do things. And as a result of that, I've still have had a few slip-ups, but as a result of that, I'm starting to see changes in her. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is the way God sets out the order to be. Yeah. What else? What are your thoughts here about what does this passage have to do with how we influence people in our lives?
I salted and peppered some green beans tonight. Salt doesn't just preserve things.
Nice.
And butter too, butter. It brings
You should have
out-
brought them now.
No, it brings out the flavor.
Yes.
And so if we are the salt of the earth, we're trying to bring out the best in other people.
Yeah. That's good.
However that may be.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. I take that word sow as obviously pretty important in this passage because the others that we're wanting to influence are not going to see and respond until we have shined so. And sometimes that takes time. Sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes the change is seen more quickly. Sometimes it may take years of consistent change in your own life before someone else recognizes and sees, oh, I see what's happening now. So this is what God calls us to. Be the ones who change first before we expect someone else to change. Let's move on to number 2. God leads us to personal change, innovation, and the new. The blanks are change and new. So 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, so that if anyone is in Christ, that one is a new creature. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. Romans 12:2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We are to be in this continual process of personal change in our lives. So I gave an illustration this morning at the men's breakfast from my marching band past. Any other marching band people in here? Thank you. What? Don't be embarrassed. Come on.
The band.
I'm like a band nerd. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. It was bad. I did too. Yeah. I did too. So when I started, I was at Sunset High School in Oak Cliff. They were a show band, and we did everything flashy. I mean, extremely flashy. Uniforms had these tassels that hung down all the way around it, about this long. So whenever we would turn, they would all fly out, and it was a white uniform with gold and purple, shiny stuff on it. A purple cowboy hat with the side popped up and a big white feather coming out the back. It was the 70s, and it was awesome. So, and we did flashy marching shows every week. And so they taught us to march in a certain way. It was called 8 to 5 back in the day. You did, for every 5 yards, you took 8 steps. Okay, so that's what they trained us on. You got to this point where you knew how to step and hit a 5-yard line marker on your 8th step, right on your heel. That took some training to learn how to walk like that, to get to that point, which usually, I don't have 5 yards marked out here, but if you're marching like that, you're taking a step that looks like this. Okay, so they taught us to walk like that and even point our toes when we marched. That was all what we did. And that's what we learned. And I learned that. I learned it well. It was tough. I had never done that before. But they taught us to march like that to the point where you can do it just without even thinking. You would hit that marker every time. The second year I was at Sunset, style changed. Then came a brand new way. It was called core marching. And it became very, very popular. It's what everybody knows now. It's what you probably did naturally. But that was a big style change for us. And they said, we're going to change from 8 to 5 to 6 to 5. You're going to now march 6 steps for every 5 yards. That was a radical change for me, to change the way you walked all of a sudden, the way you marched, the way you just thought. Because we did that without even thinking. You're playing your music, you're reading your music there, you're playing, you're following your routine you've got. Walking was just what you just automatically did. To have to change from doing this to now a 6 to 5 looks more like this. It's a very different stride, and they taught us that we had to roll our foot when we stepped. So instead of doing this stuff, we were having to roll our feet so that when you marched, your head did not move. It was a very different way. I had to learn a new way to walk. And it was difficult. It was challenging. And then we taught everybody in the band how to do that. And I came to Red Oak. They didn't even know what marching was, basically, at that time. So we had to start all over again. But we trained a whole new generation in how to walk 6 to 5. So change can be challenging, but this is what you and I are called to in our life. Change has to happen in us first. We have to be the ones who bring our attitudes into conformity to what Christ says. You can't expect your children, your spouse, friends, whoever you've got you want to make a difference in. You can't expect them to change if you haven't changed. It has to start with us. So that has to be your just consummate prayer. God, change me, change my attitudes, change my words, change my heart so that I look like you and I am continually being made new. Number 3. Innovation, change, and growth must be strategic and intentional. Strategic and intentional. This is true for your spiritual life, your marriage, your relationships, your career, whatever skill you have. If you want to grow, if you want to change, you have to intentionally be about that. I know sometimes people like to think in their spiritual life or even their relationships that just kind of just happens. It just kind of by osmosis is supposed to just happen somehow organically. Well, just let that happen. That sounds good, but it doesn't work. If you want change to happen, you have to intentionally be about that. If you want to change the way you view people, you're going to have to pick up some books on understanding how people think and how to relate to them. We sit down with people and we help them understand personality types. Heather and I are working, we just finished working with one couple. We have 3 other couples we're working with that are in premarital counseling. And we're teaching them how to understand each other's personality types, how to understand the way they think, how to understand the difference between the way men and women think, how to understand how to relate to in-laws and family. All that stuff, you've got to learn that. That stuff doesn't just come natural. But when you learn it, when you understand something about the personality types, you can understand, oh, that's why they always respond that way to me. That's why they respond that way in a situation. And then you can change how you relate. You can change how you perceive them. But that means I have to be intentional about that. I have to work on that. Your marriage is not going to just automatically be good. You have to intentionally work at it. You have to learn, change, grow in the process. You should be finding some books, listening to some podcasts, going to a conference, going to a retreat, doing something. If you're not doing something to intentionally grow and change, you will struggle. You will have backwards progress instead of forward progress. I talked to Jerry Phillips, who's teaching the love language class tonight. I talked to him this week, and he said, I think they've been married 26 years, and he said for the past 23 years, they have every year at least done something to intentionally work on their marriage, whether it's pick up a book, go to a retreat, have a conversation about their marriage, learn something new about communication. And he says, if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't be where we are today. That's an example. If you want to grow, you want to change, you're going to have to be intentional. And man, what a day for resources. They're everywhere. Man, you can go online, you can find podcasts that you can listen to on the way to work or during your day. There's books, there's some great stuff out there. If you're looking for any of that, let me know. I could put you in touch with the subject and the place to find any of those, whether they're video, podcast, or books. All right, cool. Number 4, avoid anything that keeps you from being on the leading edge of God's work. Avoid anything. So you may, when it comes to innovation, be early adopter, late majority, or a laggard. But when it comes to the work of God in our life, we should never be in the laggard category. We should be on the leading edge. God is at work in your life. Our goal ought to be, God, I want to be right up on the front edge. I don't want to be late to the game. I don't want to have to wait and buy in. I don't want to have you tell me something for 3 months, 3 years, or 3 decades before I finally agree and buy into it. I want to be on the leading edge of it, and I'll be there. If you want to do that, then you're going to have to avoid some things. And here's some attitudes that we have to avoid. Stubbornness, resistance, temptation, laziness, overindulgence, fear, doubt, and refusal. Those are just some of the attitudes that if these are part of your attitude vocabulary, if these are what are in your toolbox, you're going to struggle. I can just tell you up front, with whatever area of your life these exist in, if this is in your marriage relationship, I can just about tell you what's going on in your home. If this is in your parenting model, I can just about tell you what's going on in your home. If this is your personal life with God, I can just about tell you what's going on. These have to be avoided, and we have to adopt these other attitudes: humility, passion, determination, learning, growth, change, diligence, creativity, plan. Those are just some. You've got to be able to put these attitudes in place and avoid the others. Proverbs 12:24 says, "The hand of the diligent will rule, but the lazy man will be put to forced labor." What does that verse mean?
The ones striving to grow and learn and, basically pursue through any means kind of thing will, kind of rise to the top. And the person that's
Exactly.
lazy and not doing anything is going to have their thumb on them basically the whole time.
It's true. It's true. Years ago, when I was in high school, you heard me tell this story before, some of it. I worked at what used to be the Total Grocery in Red Oak. It doesn't exist anymore. Then the owner moved us to the one here that was the shell. It's the tutoring center now that doesn't really, there's nothing there because the roof's caved in. But that's where it used to be called the Total Grocery. It was the only thing here in Ovilla except for the car wash and Pickard's Grocery. So Ovilla, back in the early 80s, was actually kind of known as the druggy town. And very few people wanted to come over here, namely because of who hung out at the Total. There was a lot of guys that hung out there that were doing drugs, and they'd park across the street down that little valley down there, and they would drink. And it was one of these places is like, I don't want to go over to Ovilla. So when the boss that I worked for in Red Oak said, "Hey, I'm going to move you over to the Ovilla store," me and a couple of the guys were a little bit nervous about that. Oh no, those guys over there. So the 3 guys that he moved, we were all believers. And we had actually all been drum majors at Red Oak High School. To bring that back around. He brought us over here and we started working. And all of a sudden, things began to change at the store because the guys that had been working there, they were lazy, they were stealing, they were not recording all of the sales, and the boss was losing money. He brought us in, and we worked differently. We had a different mindset about us. And so, all of a sudden, the store began to improve. And soon, he began to let those guys go. And soon, he said, "You got any other friends we can hire?" I said, "Yeah, actually we do." We began to hire our friends, and soon, the whole culture changed there. People started coming back to the store because now they felt safe coming into Total. And it became the place to be, and business boomed. He ended up getting rid of his other store and just relied on this one right here. So whoever is diligent will be the ones who rise to the top, because employers want that guy. They want the guy who's diligent. They want the guy who's loyal. They want the guy who's going to work hard. That same principle applies over into life. If you'll be diligent about working in your marriage, in your attitudes, in your personal life, you will end up ruling. You'll be at a place of confidence. You'll be at a place of influence. You won't be the one who is below, who's distressed, who's struggling, who can't get anywhere. You will instead rise to the top. So, great principle there. You've got to avoid anything that keeps you from being on the leading edge. And the last one, wait with patience for others to follow. What we read earlier, Jesus said, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. It happens in a sentence, but it really takes time. It takes time for them to see. It takes time for them to buy in. So I'm using a passage here from 1 Peter 3, and I'm using the New Living Translation, because Peter writes about a situation here where a woman had a husband who was not a believer. And she was struggling. What do? I believe. I want to follow the Lord, but he is uninterested. In fact, he's mean. He's cruel. I'm struggling. How do I be an influence to him when he's not interested? Do I nag him? Do I beg him? Do I criticize him? Do I leave little sticky notes around everywhere for him? What do? Do I send him texts all day long? Have you read your Bible today? What do I do? And Peter writes this. He said, in the same way, you wives must accept the authority of your husbands. That's tough. And you got to know, he's talking to women who were struggling with who their husband was. Why do I have to submit to him? He doesn't even believe in God. He's not even respectable. And he says, if you want to change them, let's start here with an attitude of respect. Then, even if some refuse to obey the good news, your godly lives will speak to them without any words. They will be won over by observing your pure and reverent lives. In other words, you'll be an influential leader in that moment. Your life, because you chose to change and do what's right regardless, that light will so shine that they will see your good works. They will be won over, that means influence, convinced. They will be won over by observing what you do and not because you had a most convincing, condemning argument against them. Woo. It's tough when you want to persuade someone and they want to get into a debate with you. And there's a part where you want to get into the debate too. And you think, okay, I got my weapons. I'm ready. I got all my information. I'm going to show them. And you go at them and nothing happens good. In fact, it ends up in a bigger argument, bigger debate, and forget it. We're just not even going to talk anymore then. That kind of thing happens. It's like, okay, do we win anything here? No. Peter's saying, if you want to win somebody, you want to influence somebody, it's not going to be because you had the most convincing argument, because you could yell louder, or because you really pulled one over on them. You showed them. That's usually not how it works. In fact, Peter says that's not how it works. What works is your life, influenced by Christ, sold out to Him, your attitude showing that. That is what will convince the person. That is what will win them over. So, I like to read some John Maxwell. Everybody heard of John Maxwell before?
John Maxwell.
John Maxwell is a good writer when it comes to leadership and influence. And he has a book of principles. He talks about 21 principles of leadership. And in it, he says one of the principles he calls the law of the lid. And what he means by that is the people around you are only going to rise up to the level of who you are. You are, in a sense, the lid. And that's true for the organization that you might work in. It's true for a group you might lead. It's true for a family. Those that are there are going to rise up to the level of the lid, and you are the lid. So that really puts some things into perspective here. Okay, if I want them to change, then I've got to raise the lid. I've got to raise me. I have to change first. That is what will make the difference. I've got to raise the lid if I want them to change. So, having said all of this, let's make some application here. So, a couple of questions at the bottom. What is an area in your life that you would say needs to be innovated, changed, and new? In other words, to have the lid lifted. So, anybody want to be so vulnerable, bold?